Okay, welcome back everybody to our study of Mishnayot, Masechet Berachot. We're up to Perek Daled, Mishnah Bet. After discussing the times for the daily tefillot, Mishnah Bet talks about a tefillah that's not necessarily related to our daily tefillot as far as Shacharit Mincha and Arbit is concerned, but rather talks about a tefillah that was said by a particular Tana, coined by a particular Tana, after finishing daily tefillah and then going to the Bet Midrash to study Torah. So there is an obligation, Shulchan Aruch brings it in Siman Kuf Nun Hey, for a person to immediately go to the Bet Midrash after they finish tefillah to combine their prayer and their study. So Rabbi Nehunya ben Hakana coined the tefillah to talk about that transition from tefillah to Torah study, and also at the end of Torah study, transitioning into daily life and work life. The Mishnah reads, Rabbi Nehunya ben Hakana haya mitpalel b'chnisato lebet hamidраsh u'biyetziato tefillah ketzara. Rabbi Nehunya ben Hakana used to pray when he entered the house of study and when he exited the house of study. In both cases, a tefillah ketzara, a short prayer. Amrulo, the students asked him, Ma makom tefillah zo? What is the literally place of this tefillah? Which Bartenura explains to mean Klomar mativa. What's the nature of this tefillah? What is it that you're praying for? What are you saying? Amar lahem, Rabbi Nehunya answered them, B'chnisati ani mitpalel shelo te'era takala al yadi. When I enter the Bet Midrash, I pray to Hashem that no stumbling block should be created by my hand, which at face value means that being a leader and a leading sage in the Bet Midrash, that he shouldn't tell people a wrong halacha, an incorrect deen, and as a result, people will follow his word and end up doing the wrong halacha, and that will be a takala, that will be a stumbling block that comes out from him. However, if you look at Bartenura adds in something based on the Berachot that's brought in the Gemara, which says additionally, he was nervous, shelo ekashel bidvar halacha, I shouldn't stumble on a matter of halacha, v'yismehu bi haverai, and my friends, my colleagues will come to mock me and say things bad about me. And as a result of that, he says, and as a result of mocking me, Hashem will punish them. And so it's my mistake which caused them to mock, which then makes Hashem punish them. So it's not only the idea of actually doing a wrong halakha, because sometimes if a rabbi tells you the wrong halakha and the person follows it, so it's not really their fault. But in the end of the day, it's more the attitude that could have been created in the Bet Midrash as a result of that. We kind of get a glimpse that the Bet Midrash was a tough place to be. If a person made errors, if he wasn't diligent, it could be a place where people were antagonistic towards others. At the same time, I'm not so sure that he's saying that that's such a good thing, right? So yes, there has to be back and forth, but obviously with respect. So in the entrance to the Bet Midrash, Rabbi Nehunya prayed for not having any errors or mistakes on his hands, so others would do the proper halacha, and that there would be a good attitude within the Bet Midrash. Ubi Yitziati, Rabbi Nehunya says at the end of the Mishnah, when he exited the Bet Midrash, Ani noten hodaya al halki, I give gratitude to Hashem for my lot to be a member of the Bet Midrash. Bartenura again expands that prayer based on the Berachot. He says that what Rabbi Nehunya would say was as follows. Modeh al hatova, he would give gratitude for the good, shehalakli, that God has given me, shesam halki mi yoshvei bet midrash, that Hashem gave me the opportunity to be amongst those who sit in the house of study. Not everybody has such a zichut. Ushte tefilot halalu, Bartenura says these two prayers, b'chnisato lebet midrash u'biyetziato, when entering and exiting the Bet Midrash, hova al kol ish ve'ish le'omran, it's an obligation for every single person to say them. That's what's said in the Berachot, that the Berachot also talks about what everybody should say. When a person enters, what should he say? And when a person exits, what should he say? Mashma, the implication was this was not just a unique tefillah that Rabbi Nehunya was praying because he was such an upstanding individual, such a virtuous man, but rather it's something that he coined that everybody should be saying. Mashma, that it's an obligation for a person to say it. So everybody has to make some kind of statement when transitioning from different parts of the day to the ideas of Torah study, which is the climax of a person's day. And this is why in many books Many Gemarot, they print these tefillot on the inside cover so that a person could say them when he transitions from tefillah into his daily study. And these prayers are brought down in Shulchan Aruch as well. Let's move to Halacha Gimal, goes back to the topic of daily Amidah, daily tefillah, with a mahloket amongst the Tanaim about what type of prayer a person has to pray. What is the nusach, the language that a person has to pray each and every day? Rabban Gamliel Omer, Rabban Gamliel said, Bechol yom mitpalel adam shemone esrei. Every day a person must pray the full shemone esrei. Shemone esrei means 18, which is the way the rabbis refer to the Amidah. We call it the Amidah because of the standing posture that we have during the prayer. The rabbis called it Shemone Esrei because originally there were 18 Berachot that were established in the Amidah. Of course, an extra Beracha was added, a 19th Beracha was added of Laminim V'Lamal Shinim, but nevertheless it retained its original name Shemone Esrei. So according to Rabban Gamliel, a person may not read or pray a shortened version of the original Amidah which the rabbis penned, regardless of his ability or inability to fully concentrate when he says that tefillah. Rabbi Yoshua says, Me'ain shemone esrei, that a person may have the ability to pray a condensed version of the shemone esrei. Me'ain means a shortened or compressed version of the original prayer, of the original shemone esrei, which means that according to Rabbi Yoshua, even on an average day, when a person could technically have kavanah, if a person should feel, for whatever reason, he doesn't want to pray the entire Amidah, he has the license to pray a shortened version of it. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Rabbi Akiva balances between the two. He's a shita memutzaat, a middle ground opinion between Rabban Gamliel, who always demands the Shemone Esrei, and Rabbi Yoshua, who allows for the Me'in Shemone Esrei even on a daily basis. Rabbi Akiva says, Im shegura tefilato befiv, if a person's tefillah is fluent and regular in his mouth, yitpalel shemone esrei, he should pray the full Amidah. In other words, on an average day, if a person is fluent and knowledgeable in his prayer and has the ability to concentrate, he should pray the full Amidah. V'im lav, however, in situations where a person may be under duress, person's in the airport for a flight, a person has to catch a train, some other type of pressure situation, and a person cannot fully concentrate as a result of that, then he has the license to pray the condensed version. So Rabbi Akiva is a little bit stricter than Rabbi Yoshua because he says on average you should not take advantage of the Me'in Shemone Esrei, but is a little more lenient than Rabban Gamliel in saying that even that under duress, a person is able to pray the Me'in Shemone Esrei. Now, one thing we have to answer is, what is this Me'in Shemone Esrei? What is the language of this shortened version? What do we mean when we say we shorten the tefillah? So Bartenura offers two possibilities based on the opinions in the Gemara. He says, Itte mefarshe, some explain by Gemara, she'omer mikol beracha ubracha min ha'emtziiyot bekotzer ve'chotem al kol ahad ve'ahad. That what it means to compress the Amidah of 18 berachot is to shorten each individual beracha, meaning that the person is still going to make 18 blessings, but each of those blessings is not going to be in its full language. Like, this is similar to what we said when we talked about a Baal Keri shortening his tefillah if he started when he wasn't supposed to. He's just going to say, Ata honen adam dad, baruch ata Hashem honen dad. Ata hashivenu avinu de toratecha, baruch ata Hashem harotzeh b'tshuva. First line, last line, skip everything in between, but he's still going to make 18 berachot. That's one approach to Me'in Shemone Esrei. However, the second approach, which is the one that's adopted according to Halacha, is Ve'ite Amre Havinenu. Some say that it's the special tefillah that the rabbis created called Havinenu. What is Havinenu? To paraphrase Bartenura, Havinenu is basically that the rabbis took a snippet, one or two words from each beracha, which captures the main theme of that beracha, and brought it into one beracha called Havinenu. So according to this approach, when a person is saying Me'in Shemone Esrei, he's only saying 7 berachot. He's only going to say the opening 3 berachot and the closing 3 berachot, which, as the Gemara points out, always stays the same. And then all of the middle 12, or nowadays 13 berachot, 1 or 2 words from each of those berachot were taken to capture the theme of that beracha, and they were mashed up into one beracha called Havinenu, which concluded with the blessing, Baruch ata Hashem shomea tefillah. which is the last of all of the bakashot, and sort of wraps them around. And so that's the idea of Havinenu, and that's the halakha lema'aseh. Halakha lema'aseh takes the idea of Havinenu and says when a person is under duress, he could pray Havinenu. Very good. So it's important, however, to note over here, I'll read the Bartenura. He writes, halakha Rabbi Akiva, that the halakha follows Rabbi Akiva. Shemi she'en tefilato shegura befiv, a person whose tefillah is not readily coming off the tongue, or bish'ata dehak, or a person who is in a duress situation. So it could be someone who's not so educated to read, has a hard time getting through the Amidah, if not a condensed version, or someone who's in an extenuating circumstance. Mitpalel Adam shalosh lishonot, he prays the first 3 berachot, v'shalosh aharonot, the final 3 berachot, v'havinenu ba'emtza, and havinenu is in the middle. Now, there's a couple of exceptions when you cannot do this. Chutz mimot geshamim, one may not do this during the rainy season, like we're in now, when we're saying barech aleinu, and we're adding the 10 talumatar. You cannot add the 10 talumatar to the havinenu. So havinenu is very rigid. There's no room to add in additions or subtractions. So you can't say it during the yemot geshamim, where you would need to add in the 10 talumatar, because if you add that, then people might think it's its own beracha. Furthermore, he says you cannot say it. He says she'eno mitpalel havinenu mipnei shetzarich lomar she'ela bebirkat hashalim. You have to make that request in barech alenu. V'chutz mimotza'ei Shabbatot v'yamim tovim. You also can't pray havinenu at the closing of Shabbat or holidays, because there you have to add in atahonantanu lahavdil ben kodesh lechol, and there's no opportunity in havinenu to add in lahavdil ben kodesh lechol. If you added it in, then people might think that havdalah in the Amidah is its own beracha. Rather, it has to be wrapped into honen adat, which you don't have the opportunity to do in havinenu. So havinenu is an option for duress or people who are uneducated throughout most of the year, but not on Yomot HaGeshamim and not on Motza'ei Shabbat v'Yamim Tovim. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen.